I'm recording now. Welcome everybody to Dealing with Difficult People. And I want to thank Ray and Bill for hosting us today as John Rue talks about how to deal with the difficult people in your life and why he's one of them. Ray and Bill, take it away.
Ray, I'll defer to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Ray Silverstein. I'm founder and president of Pro President Resource Organization. We create peer advisory groups. I have a couple of members on here today. And the reason John asked me to host because he knows I'm the most difficult person. So this meeting is basically to give me insight as to how I can behave better. But around John, he calls me an old goat, but that's because he recognizes I'm really a young kid. So, Bill, take it away.
Thanks, Ray, and I appreciate your co-hosting responsibilities. And John, thanks for including me as well. My name is Bill Himmelstein. I founded a commercial real estate consulting firm a little over 12 years ago. And what I've found is that, we all talk about, well, I got this no asshole policy, or, I try to surround myself with good people. And as much as you do that, and as much as you, really focus on aligning yourself with high integrity, good folks, if you're in a business like mine, which constantly is dealing with other people, clients and landlords, and always negotiating, sometimes you're going to come across some challenging folks. And I thought that this would be a great topic for a lot of us, just to maybe get some tips and tricks on how we can best handle those more challenging personalities that we come across in our daily lives.
Okay, so John, take it away.
All right.
So who do you find difficult? 3 questions you want to engage in today. Who do you find difficult? Who finds you difficult? How can you deal with both issues? For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Rue. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and we are here to talk about this subject, which we've done many times in many formats. And I'm co-facilitating with Matt Elwell, former president of Comedy Sports, who's a 5-star trainer. So what we're going to do, I'm going to let you go around briefly, just briefly, if you would, just your name, your company, your number 1 expectation of today. After we do that, we're going to talk about the first 2 questions. Who do you find difficult? Who finds you difficult? Then I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Matt has an exercise he's going to do with us. And then I'm going to give you some what we would call leader-to-leader tips to deal with those people you find difficult. And we'll be talking about a best practice tool that may help you with that. Some of you are familiar with it. And then around noon-ish, we'll go back to you and let you talk about your takeaways. For those who haven't been to these before, these are interactive conversations, not presentations. So with that, let's go around and do the introduction. So let's start with Jerry. Jerry, I want to tell your name, your company, and your primary expectation of the day.
Jerry Siegel. My company is JASB Management Training, Executive Coaching, and Personal Development. And my expectation for today is that I'm going to learn something about how to deal with difficult people. In my case, it's really dealing with CEOs.
Okay, great. And Sandy.
Hi, I'm Sandy Castro. I'm the president and co-founder of IC Stars. We're a technology training organization in Chicago and Milwaukee, and soon to be Kansas City. And my expectation for today is to get some insight on one of our managing directors, and I'm struggling with what to do next.
Great. Mr. Dennis.
Dennis Poulin with R&G Vent Cleaning. We're an industrial cleaning company. We do fire code maintenance service for the food service industry. I guess the thing I want to take away from today is to try to identify how I might be perceived as difficult.
Great point. Great thing to do. One of the famous quotes from Jung is those people that irritate you can teach you a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
It's kind of disgusting. Those people that irritate you teach you a lot about yourself. So we all have people that irritate us. So, Mr. Cyrus.
Hi there, I'm Cyrus Ravetna from Ravetna Architects here in Chicago. Our projects are both residential and commercial. What do I want to get out of today? I guess better understanding of people and how to communicate better with people. And who do I find the most difficult is any disc profile that doesn't match mine exactly.
Great, great. Andrew,
Yes, I'm Andrew Balderson, owner of Balderson and Company, and we are a CPA practice. We work with business owners and individuals, and obviously we work and interact with a lot of different people. And so looking to hear all of your insights about how you deal with clients as well as your staff and coworkers.
good. And Miss Betty.
I'm Betty Pime with a foreign language service, and I want to take away information to help our office atmosphere be happy. And even though we work very hard, I would like us to work as a team that has respect for one another, regardless
How
of.
big is your team, Betty?
It's about 8 to 10.
Great. Okay, great. Any other expectations for today?
I can do that. That would be excellent.
Yeah. Bill McNitt.
Bill McNitt, I'm with Thurston Group, a lower middle market private equity firm headquartered in Chicago. The industry I'm in is full of difficult people, so this was right up the alley for me.
Okay. David, I saw David. David was on it. Now I don't see him. Is he on it, Matt?
I believe he is. At least he.
Can you hear me, David?
He's off right now.
Yeah, it looks like he dropped off.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have
If you
somebody
have
on.
someone joining by phone at a phone number, can you introduce yourself? If you're
She's
calling.
connecting. It's connecting the audio. It says.
Okay. We
There
did
she
just
is.
have Samantha join us.
Samantha, welcome. Can you hear us? Can you?
I think you're on mute.
No, she's still connecting. Just give her a second.
All right, we'll come back to Samantha in a minute as soon as she's up. Is there anybody else, Matt, that I need to know about?
Well, let's ask. Is there anyone who didn't get to share?
Morning, Rico.
I don't. I'm looking at a bunch of
How
faces
are
who I
you?
recognize. Oh, I'm hearing someone talk now.
Oh,
Oh, and
call.
I think you can hear me now.
yes, I
Yeah.
can.
Hey,
Thank you.
Samantha, would you introduce yourself, your company, and
Sure.
what's your main expectation for today?
Geek Week for you? Good. How's it going? How was Geek Week for you?
Oh, hey, if someone has anyone talking in the background, can you mute? And then we might be able to hear Samantha better.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Mm,
Oh,
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
yes, we can.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Bonamassa. I am the founder and owner of Coast to Coast Compliance, a securities compliance consulting firm. So we work with private equity firms, investment advisors, broker dealers, hedge funds, lots of different financial services organizations, helping them with registrations, kind of legal and compliance, all the things that everyone doesn't like to do that we like to streamline and make very easy. And I'm looking to get out of this just what everyone else is. You know, I speak with a variety of different people all day, every day. Honestly, I'm very grateful that most of them are not difficult to deal with, which makes it that much harder when I get someone that is difficult to deal with, because I rarely find it. So it's just such a stark contrast that I'm excited to be a part of this. So thanks.
All right, let's go into the first question and whatever. So who do you find difficult? Now, I'm not talking about nobody. I don't want to mention people. I'm talking about adjectives. So you may find if you're a very aggressive person, you may find quiet people very difficult. So shout outs. Who do you find difficult? What are the kind of personalities you find difficult? Dennis, give a quick shout out.
Okay, I would say the person who assumptively takes the lead, who always wants to be in charge and is not listening to other people.
Okay,
The bully.
great.
Obnoxious.
Obnoxious.
Egotist.
So we're joined together this morning because during your intake,
Hello?
with both.
Hello?
There we go. Thanks, Sandy. No, I think she fixed it.
Okay, shout out. Anybody else? Jerry?
Yeah,
Any-
I can
What's
go.
that egotist?
Egotist, okay.
I find one of the toughest people that I have to deal with is they're kind of one and the same. Is number one, I'll send them an email or something, and I'll ask several questions, and they might respond to either one question or they won't respond to any of the questions. And the other thing I get is the person that doesn't respond at all. Like I had a guy recently reach out to me and say, Bill, we've got to take a look at our lease. And this was probably maybe 3 months ago. And since then I've followed up 4 or 5 times, maybe 6, haven't heard a thing back. He reached out to me, and the very least he could do is say, oh yeah, we got it covered, or we don't need it now, whatever. But people are either unresponsive or don't respond to the questions you're asking.
So not responsive, bullies, egotists, what else? Jump out. What are the other people that press your button? Think of these people. Again, think of the Jungian phrase. Those people that press your buttons, those people you find difficult on your teachers. Who are the people that press your buttons? There's no wrong answer here. So just shout out. What about you, Ray?
Well, my feeling is I can't let them disturb me. Life's too short to have the aggravation.
Okay, great. So Ray.
So if I have one of Bill's issues where someone doesn't respond to me, I basically send them back an email and say, I hope you're feeling okay because I haven't heard from you.
Right. What about, but think of just shout out adjectives. Anybody else?
Difficult, get my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
It's not so much the bully, but the person who won't pay attention to the fact that others are trying to give input.
Okay.
Okay, won't pay attention.
I'd say people who are demanding and don't really understand, the process that we go through. And,
Pushers, demanding people.
And don't have empathy, perhaps.
No empathy, another style. Anybody else? Samantha, anything, who are the people that press your button, Samantha?
You're on mute.
Samantha, you got to push your button.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't know how to characterize it, but people that are nice, but in a sneaky, like ineffective way. Like everyone should be nice. That's just like a baseline. You've also got to kind of do your job too. So to kind of get away with not doing something, but by having a good attitude along the way. Because I find that it's difficult to kind of like, God, but they're nice, but they're not doing anything. Like,
no results. People, you don't want to have people around you. They can be sweet as pie, but they're not getting any results. What about
exactly?
You? Anything else? What are the people that press your buttons, Bill?
I mean, to me, that's really the toughest thing. People that are demanding and whatnot, what I've realized is just, provide them the information. One thing I've been able to avoid is when people, you tell them one thing, they don't take your advice, and then down the road, they get mad at you. I just try to document and say, well, when we first started, I suggested this, here's the email. But we can certainly revisit that if you'd like.
Right. Right.
So maybe people who don't take your advice and then get mad at you later for that.
What about Bill McNitt? Anything else you wanna say that are people that press your buttons?
In my industry, there are a lot of people that think they're the smartest ones in the room.
Smarties. So smarties press your buttons.
And how about people who don't have the right values?
Wrong values. Matt, anything else you want to add to this?
Oh, so many. I would say a lack of curiosity.
No curiosity.
A lack of self-knowledge, or like, I call it running on autopilot. Like when you're in a conversation with somebody and they seem to be having a conversation purely based on what they think is going to make the desired impact on you rather than being real. And then the other thing is kind of a pace tone thing of, people who ask questions, but then don't stop to create space for an answer to happen. So like that kind of like, let's get to it. that is so frenetic that you never get to it.
Yeah.
This is my one-man show. I can do 2 hours
Right.
on people I don't like.
Well, and Matt does a lot of training, so it's interesting. So if we continued on with this, what would you notice about this? That who do you find difficult? What might you notice about this?
You want to repeat the question?
Yeah, if we continued on, we could go on and on with the people that press our buttons we find difficult. What would you notice about it? If we had a whiteboard right now, we were putting all these adjectives in up there, what would you notice? What would you finally notice about this?
They're
The
not
lack-
That this could, oh,
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say that this could go on into perpetuity, that we could come up with an endless amount, like we could
Right.
keep going for forever.
Right. And we've done this before. The common denominator I want you to look at is you are difficult for some people. So no matter who your style is, you could be the sweetest, nicest person, the most results oriented. Your style is difficult. So when we're dealing with difficult people, what's interesting to notice is that if it's always out there, to use Matt, it's not, you're not realizing that, you're difficult. As nice as your style is, might be difficult. So, and the second question I just want to touch on and then turn it over to Matt, who finds you difficult is probably your opposite. So if you're really results oriented, Bill, you're friendly but results oriented. And Samantha, you mentioned results oriented, and people that don't get results are not responsive. That's your disowned selves, or those are the people. So if you're sweet as pie and never say anything, maybe the bullies. If you're real quiet, the aggressive people. If you're real aggressive, the passive aggressive. So this exists in the world. The question isn't does it exist, is what am I going to do about it? So with that, I want to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to do an exercise with us, and we'll continue the conversation. So Matt, take it.
Sure. And I just put in chat the best notes that I could take, but our difficult list of all the different kind of adjectives that we used. And so this next exercise is going to be about figuring out, is there some kind of map we can use? And we'll use the map to figure out where we are and where these people who are so difficult for us might be. And then we'll use that to kind of see what the distance is and how we might be able to close some of that distance to better understand. And that distance is that this whole map is DISC. And you might have heard John, if you've been on things with John before, that we handle this idea of dealing with difficult people by first finding out what are the differences in our behavioral styles, and is that the source of that friction? I would just ask, for those of you who are on camera right now, can you raise your hand and just say if you have taken a DISC assessment before? Would you raise your hand? Okay. All right, cool. So you may already have a really nuanced understanding of this if you've read through that 25-page report and gotten a graduate degree in yourself. That's very useful. What we might be able to do is find out where each other is using a really quick and simple version of DISC. This is kind of like the beginner's arithmetic to the calculus you've received. And since so many people raise their hand, I don't even need to say, well, have you ever done any assessment? So you understand what assessment is. You understand what DISC is. For this conversation, I'm going to use our whiteboard. So I'm going to begin by sharing that. Well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that yet because I want to do one thing with you first. And that is a chat exercise. So I'm going to ask you to put things in chat right now. If you don't have chat up, look in your toolbar and you will see a little thing that says chat. Looks like it has a little balloon, like a speech balloon. Just click on that. It should bring up a little window for you. And that has chat. And that's where you'll see my list of all the who we find difficult, some different things in there. Okay. So here's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to think about, what are you most comfortable with? Like, what are you most comfortable working with? And is that, and you're going to say both to this pair. I want you to kind of make a choice. Choose which of the two are you most comfortable with. And the pairing is people or things. So just in chat, just write people if you think you work better with people, and things if you work better with like task execution. Yeah, okay. So this is already interesting, right? Because, you know, the people who come to Bill and Ray and John events are often entrepreneurs. They're often self-starters. And so we start to see these interesting trends, right? We've got a lot of people. Those are also the kind of people who might choose to spend an hour and a half talking to people when they don't have to, right? Okay, great. So you have this pair of people and things, okay? Now I want you to think during your day how you're most likely to act in conversations with others. Are you more likely to ask or to tell? So put in chat ask or tell. Yeah. You might, if it's hard, think about your significant other and what they would say you are. Okay. All right, great. Now I'm going to need you to remember those two because that's going to create a word pair for you. So you're probably, you know, you might be a people tell or a people ask. There are a couple task people in here that'll definitely fix. Sandy says definitely tell. Okay, good. That'll work. All right, so keep that in mind because now I'm going to take us over to a whiteboard. Okay. Now you're not going to see as many people probably on your screen, but you can see this whiteboard. Now my question for you is, there are some tools you need, which are the annotate tools to play along, or I can do this for you if you can't find them, but see if you can find the tools that it looks like a text, a little draw thing. And if you can find that, just kind of like give me a thumbs up in chat. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm assuming you can see the whiteboard. All right, so remember we talked about tell and ask. So I'm going to put tell here at the top. All right, and you should be able to see that now. And I'm going to put ask down at the bottom. And then on the side over here, I'm going to put a new thing, and that is, what, did I do that wrong? Tell, ask, yeah, okay. Task, which we can also call things. And then over here, I'm going to put people. So can everybody see those four things? Great. So you can see, for those of you who are still kind of surviving your, if you're still in recovery from having to do math in high school, you can see what's basically a Cartesian graph here, right? We've got these 4 quadrants, and this is a very imperfect way of doing this, but it's useful for this kind of exercise. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to put your first name, or, you know, I know we have a couple Bills on the call, so you might want to throw in an initial, but try and grab the text feature and put your, try and put your name. So I'll put Matt here, right where you think you are. If you're a people asker, you can put it there. If you're a people teller, you can put it up there. Cannot find. Okay. So you might have a thing on your screen that says whiteboard, or on your little kind of list of tools. And if you don't, I can do this for you.
I don't see it, Matt.
Okay. All right.
Neither do I.
Oh, great. Somebody named Andrew. Not somebody named Andrew. Andrew. Okay, great. Cyrus. All right. So we know some people can do it. All right. Bill figured it out. Now, if you're having trouble, okay. So Samantha, you're a tell people. Okay. I will put you in tell people.
Okay, Matt, you can put me in ask people.
Ask people. All right.
The same. This is Bill McNitt.
Okay. So that's Ray. That's Bill M. I don't know why my voice just cracked there. I'm not 16. Jerry, ask people. All
But
right.
Matt, after I ask, I then tell.
Okay.
I think,
Oh, Samantha, you're in the wrong quadrant. Are you? Oh, you're a tell people, not a tell, not an ask, not a. Yes, I put you in the exact opposite, didn't I?
It's okay. I'm sure someone wishes I was an ask people or ask task.
All right.
this is Dennis. I think I'm a tell people,
Tell people. Okay.
I think.
You are.
Okay.
This is Betty. I think I'm tell people down towards the center though.
Oh, like maybe down here.
Yeah.
Okay. So there. Who else wants me to add them or move them around? So we've got a lot. You can see here, we've got a lot on the people side.
We're missing John.
Yeah, John Rue, where would you say you are? I have an opinion.
People tell.
You think so? Okay.
You can come over here if you want and watch.
For those interesting parts, I will be listening in.
And yeah, anybody else that we have not heard from yet? I'm looking through our quick list here. I think we've got everybody. Yeah. Sandy, do we have where would you say you go? Oh, you're yeah, Sandy. Let me know which one you are, and I'll put you there. I'm gonna tell people. Okay, I will put you. Wow. Okay. All right. So so now you can see that we have a lot of people up in this tell people quadrant, a lot of people in this ask people quadrant, and we don't have as much over on the task side. Okay. Interesting. I hope I did this right, John, because I'm thinking there may be people who are not in the right quadrant. So I will put in here the labels that I think we have, and you tell me if you think that's right. So normally when someone is task focused but tell active, we put them in what we call D, or dominance profile. And then when someone is over here, we put them in C, which is what we call the compliance profile. That's different than Samantha's compliance. That's a more of a personal compliance. And there's lots of different words for these things, but I'm going to have John kind of go through them one at a time and talk about, who they are and what their needs are. But when you're someone who's more likely to ask, but you're more of a people person, we call you an S, or steadiness. And then last but not least, put it very up high here, if you are a people person, but you do a lot of telling, we call you an I, or influencer. And all right, so those are in place. So I want to stop there for a second, just give John a chance to talk to this, and then we'll do another half of the exercise if we have time.
Why don't you continue? Well, most of you know about this. This all comes from just a quick thing because of time. This comes from Young, 1921, Psychological Types. Myers-Briggs and DISC are internationally used, published in 30 languages. Describes behaviors, doesn't describe values, tells you nothing about your skills, experience, education, IQ, awareness, values, beliefs, but it says about behaviors, and behaviors are observable. So that's why the Myers-Briggs and the DISC are used internationally. Give it back to you, Matt.
Okay. So the one last thing I want to do, and why don't we do this in chat, and I'll pick a couple to add here. But now that you know what you are, and you just think of it in terms of that, I'm a tell people, I'm an ask people. I want you to think of one group of people that you have to interact with, and maybe it's a group you find difficult. And I want you to tell us what they are. So if maybe it could be, Matt's clients are a lot of task tellers, right? And you can see where I am, and you can see where they are, right? So feel free to put a couple of those in chat. And you don't have to name any real names, but as you're thinking about difficult people, what might be interesting is, are they difficult because they are so different from us, or are they difficult because they're so much like us? So Bill says task compliance is prevalent in the private equity industry. That makes a lot of sense, which is interesting, Bill, considering you're over on the people side. Sounds like a lot of people you need to work with are over on this other side. Right, so we could say, Bill's clients might be over here, Bill M's clients anyway. Although I bet we have a lot of clients over here. There we go. That's one. And board members, task tell, yep. So over here, yeah. So that's Sandy's board. I think many of my clients are task and ask. Yep. I wouldn't be surprised, Samantha. I wouldn't be surprised. All right. So you can see, and I won't put all of them up, but I think one of the interesting things about DISC and why we love to do DISC in organizations is that we can get a sense of where everybody's at, and we can share a map very much like this that kind of shows their relative positions. And what we love to do in training, I would say, John, is that, we start here with this understanding, but we don't stop there, right? It's not, the people in this quadrant are right and everybody else is wrong, and you just have to convince them of that. Instead, it's what are the strategies that help us articulate what we need and negotiate? Because I have my needs and you have your needs, we're both going to articulate them, but then we're going to need to negotiate for some central ground. And then what I usually suggest is a third beat, which is moderate, right? So I say what I need, we negotiate for how to get to middle ground, and then I'm probably going to moderate my behavior a little bit. So I speak a little bit closer to your language, you speak a little bit closer to mine, so that we can stay on the same page easier.
What questions you want to ask Matt about this?
Yeah, please.
Just an observation. I
Please.
find that many of my customers are far more on the dominant side as being business leaders, business owners, and many of my employee base tend to be either compliant or steadies. And so I've got two different styles I'm dealing with all at the same time.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Any other comments and questions of Matt?
I have a question or a comment. Aren't most people D's or I's?
I would say S's are, most people in general are S's. And then the people who kind of tend to get along, I would say are S's, although I's can be the center of a conversation. The S's can be the ones all around the I going, oh yeah.
So I thought that, I's and D's in general like to hang out with people, and S's and C's are more sort of task oriented.
In the DISC system, the D's and the I's are called the extroverts, but D's, a lot of D's will tell you they're not extroverts. Worldwide global stats on this are available if you email me. Worldwide, 2/3 of the world, and it varies by country, is what I call ISIs, I's and S's. Most of the companies we profile I's and S's. A real practical thing to do is to profile a company. Like we just profiled a company, and we know that 75% are D's and I's. It's very unusual. Dennis' company we profiled, very unusual, what we didn't expect. It helps you understand how you have to communicate and how you have to do change management.
Yeah. I'll just add one thing to that. We had a company that we were working with where we found no D's at all on the team. There was nobody leading the boat. And so we told them to get a baseball cap and put the letter D on it. And in meetings, somebody always had to wear the D cap, because that'd be the person who is designated to push the conversation towards a decision, towards a action, right? So I think one of the other powerful things is, as John said, the people who annoy you are your teachers, is where you don't have one of these quadrants, rather than saying, oh, thank God we don't have to deal with them, is to try and figure out a way to get that perspective, because it's going to help you create better solutions.
Can we go back to the screen and see each other, Matt?
Yeah. Yep. Well, let me turn this off. Yeah, there we go.
Any other questions you want to ask Matt before we move on to the next segment?
All right.
Okay, well, let's do leader to leader. This might be useful because it deals with, again, as we know, these certain people press our buttons. So let's talk about, have a conversation, and we'll use DISC again, but I'll put it in common language for those that don't know DISC. So the D, if you have to deal with the D's, if the D's are the people that push your buttons, the D's are also called pushers, or you may call them a type A. And what's the characteristics of this person? Well, if you're a D or dealing with Ds, they come across as abrasive. They can come across as not caring. They're pushers. They're interrupt you. So that may be a person that triggers you and you find difficult. Now, if you have a lot of D or an I in you, it may not be that difficult for you, but this is by far worldwide. We've done this worldwide for over 30 years in 4 companies. By far, this is the profile that most people find the most difficult. So what's the tip, leader to leader? The tip is type A's are results oriented. So when you're dealing with a D, you're smart to say, when you get a New York D on the phone, what do they say to you? What do they say to you, Jerry?
What's the bottom line?
Yeah, what do you want? You go to a Manhattan restaurant, what do you want? And it's impacted by culture. So culture impact. A D, New York D is direct and to the point. Now, if you're from the South, or you're from Japan, or you're from Australia, this may be offensive to you, but it's how it is. It's not changing because you don't like it. So what are the tips to deal with a D? Be clear, be brief, be gone. If they are not relationship oriented, if they want a relationship, you'll know it. What result would you like, Mr. D? And then if you can do it, deliver it. Speak directly to results. Stay on track. Do not start talking, if you're an I, about your dog, your cats, building a relationship, trying to make you like them, like you. You know, they're not interested in that. Okay, so let's just do a Q and let's just have a conversation. What do you find? Any other comments here or questions? If you find these kind of profiles difficult, what questions or comments do you have about them?
They're not good listeners.
They're not. They're selective listeners. Jerry's right on the money. If you bore them, they get the picture quick. If you bore them with details, Andrew, you're a CPA. If you give the D's too much detail, they get pissed off. They do not. They got the picture. Don't tell me the details. Give me the bottom line. Samantha, what do you find difficult about D's, if anything?
I think I might find them a little less difficult.
Right.
I don't know.
Wonder why. How come?
I don't know. I was born in New Jersey. I can match that intensity and enthusiasm.
Right.
I might be a D every once in a while, I think. So.
It's familiar. So here's a good example. So you probably have a little D in you also. So it's familiar. So if you grew up with it, it's normal. But if you grew up in Australia, when I was in Australia in a group meeting, I said, do you ever have to deal with New York D's? You sure the language they describe to describe that? Well, in Australia, the tall poppy is cut off. So it's cultural. So,
Yeah,
Matt, anything else you would offer on the D profile, dealing with D's?
When we were looking for a new salesman for New York City to sell the small hardware stores years ago,
Yeah.
Our old salesman retired, and we said we have to look for someone like spit in your face. They think it's raining, because that was in order to survive in New York.
Yeah.
So Samantha understands that.
Bill, anything you want to say about the D, dealing with D's?
You have to challenge them. Rather than telling them what to do, you have to create a challenge.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with Ray on that.
Right. D's, S's and C's, when I ask D's, if you ask D's, this happened just yesterday, if you ask D's about their eyes, you can notice they say they're passionate or intense. That's how they describe it. You know what S's and C's say about D's eyes? Angry and scary. And how do you motivate them? And they use challenges, veiled threats, and outright threats to motivate people. Why? That's how you motivate them. Ray just said it. If you want to have a D client and you have a D employee, you can say you couldn't get it done if your life depended on it. So I'll tell you a quick street story about a D, and then we'll go to I. So I have a 5-year-old granddaughter on the East Coast, and she's a D. She's 4.5 years old. We go to a park. She goes down the slide. She's trying to crawl up, and it's very difficult. She says, JB. She calls me JB. It's difficult. I said, Natalie, you're never going to be able to do that. Now she's 4 years old. She did it. She said, I did it. And so And my wife says she's pushier than all my sisters combined. So this is these traits. You come out of the womb a lot with this stuff. Any other comments or questions about dealing with the what is called difficult D's to a lot of people? There's a lot of D's here, so they're not that difficult. But any other comments or question before we go to the I's?
Yeah, my staff will tell me, why do you like dealing with those direct, gruff people? I said, I know what they want.
You're right.
I said, they don't, there's no mystery of what you need to do to make them happy.
It's right up front. And by the way, in selling, they're called one-touchers. They don't need time. So if you're a C and you think you are an S, they need time. They don't need time. They don't need facts. You can touch them and close. Save time. All right, let's go to the I. This is the other extrovert. How do you know it's an I? Another word for an I, Betty, is a talker. The I's are the ones you say, what's new? And that's the last thing you said. They will tell you their story. And these are results oriented. The I's are relationship oriented. So when you go right to result, here you have to build a relationship. They buy, or there is an employee on relationship. So we got two high I's right on as host. What would you want to say about the I's, Ray and Mr. Bill? Those are two I's, and I don't think Samantha's probably far behind them.
Well, John, with you speaking, I can't get a word in.
You've never been short of getting in. I got news for you. Bill, what do you want to say about the I?
No, I mean, I've always found that a lot easier to deal with, obviously, because that's what I am. And yeah, I mean, I like building that relationship and building trust before we get down to the brass tacks.
Right. What's your tips to dealing with an I? How do you, if you have an I employee or you have an I new client, what do you, and Dennis, jump right in too, because you're an I off the chart too here. So jump in. What's the tip you would offer to be effective? Because this is a very difficult profile for a C. C's and I's have a natural problem. C's want information. C's want to tell them the story. So this is difficult for a lot of C's dealing with I's because they're always worried about them. They never stop talking. When you get C's together and D's, they sometimes, are they going to do any work? I said they work and they talk. They just talk all the time. So what's the tips of dealing with I's, Dennis?
Well, I've always thought when I'm dealing with an I, if it doesn't matter what the topic is, if you can have a specific non-related topic, just get them started. And then they'll be happy with that. And then you can deal with business later.
Right. Why is that important when you're dealing with I's, which some people find difficult? Why is it difficult? Why is it important?
I think you have to set limits with them.
Yes.
You know, I've got a phone call in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
I'm going to a meeting right now.
Right.
So
And quite frankly, as an I, we don't mind that.
as long
That's
as
part
they
of
know,
the-
yeah, as
that's
long as
part
they
of the
know you
open
love them.
communication.
You can rush them. You can tell them it's a 50-yard dash. We got to get to the airport, but they got to know you love them. Now, the challenges with I's, if you're an I, and there's a lot of I's here, C's and D's sometimes view this as superficial, that you're not sincere. It's offensive to I's when you tell them that. They are viewed sometimes as not listeners, that they don't listen. Now, I's are actually superior intuitive listeners. They pick up intuition. You may think it's female and male. It's actually a wiring. So it's very interesting. Samantha, anything else you want to say about the I before we move to the S?
No, it's so interesting because so much of what you're saying is like message delivered is so much different than message received because it depends on your profile and how you're delivering it, but then how 4 different profiles might receive it. It's just that kind of
It's
really
exactly
interesting. Yeah.
and if you want to get scientific about this, the language you use and whether you're using declaratives or interrogatories, very important to learn the words. So, for example, the D word is new. They like new and fast. I's like shiny stuff. Now, how do you know it's an S? S is another word for S's in common language would be quiet, empathy listeners. You can pick out the S's in the meeting just by stopping and paying attention because they don't say much. You will see their eyes. You can see it even on, you can hear it on, you can feel it on the phone. You can see it on Zoom and what have you. They have attentive eyes and they look like they're listening word for word because they listen word for word. And Sandy would be one of the examples in this group. So now, what are the problems they sometimes have with S's? People have is they feel they're not motivated because they don't say anything. They don't assert themselves. So if you're an S, you're viewed as not assertive. This is a problem sometimes for the D. They can be viewed as passive aggressive because they don't say no. S's almost never say no. So if you're a D and you go into say some crazy stuff you say, and they look at you, especially if they're Asian, it's worse. And they don't say anything. Don't think they're in agreement. They're not in agreement. They just think they don't want to make a wave. Cyrus, what do you want to say about that?
I would also say be very careful about criticizing an S.
Yeah.
Because they take it very personally. So you have to say it in a very careful way that doesn't put the blame on them.
Right.
So John, I've worked for two Asian companies, Japanese company, a Korean company, and it was very, very difficult to know whether or not they agreed with what you said.
It's exactly, Bill's right on the spot. They buy on character. You don't know when the decision's made because as Bill knows, it's a non-dualistic culture. If it's Japan, they grew up with Buddhism, so there's no dualism.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Just wanted to tag on that for a second because I did a lot of call center training in the Philippines where they actually teach you about the Filipino yes, which is that someone will literally say yes and it means maybe. And so I talked to the yes is kind of like a aloha there. You have to kind of figure that out. And as someone who in a lot of my trainings would say, does that make sense? How does that feel? And I would get a lot of yes. And so I asked the trainers who were Filipino there, I was like, well, how do you figure out if it's working? And they said, what we say is, what does that mean to you? And so when they ask that question, it requires an open-ended answer back. And then you detect in that if they're on board or not. So a lot of this is us kind of changing our way of getting up the mountain to meet these kinds of cultural differences.
So where the D was the results buyer and the I is the relationship buyer, the S is buys on safety. They're safety buyers. Make it safe. So with the S, the tip would be lower your voice. What are we going to do? What, why, and how? Please and thank you. You cannot imagine how powerful this is with S's. Show sincere appreciation and encourage them. Where the D, like we just told Ray, you can tell them, hey, Ray, you couldn't do that to save your life. The S, just the opposite. You can do it. Okay. You blow air in the balloon. You encourage them. You go ahead, Ray.
I was going to ask you, can you touch on the adaptive and natural style? Because when I look at my DISC profile, there's a difference between adaptive and natural.
What Ray's talking about, pardon me, Bill?
Yeah, what does Ray mean?
Ray, what he means is when you can, by the way, you can call Darlene in our office and take one free DISC management profile, which tells you about your leadership style. You want to know how others see your leadership style. So what he's talking about, Bill, is that on graph 1 of your DISC profile describes your behavior on the job. So Dennis may be more C-ish on the job as a president because he has to do things right. But his natural style might be more I. So that's called adaptive. You adapt on the job to do the job right, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But your natural style is what shows up under pressure and when you're in a free state. So you want to pay attention to that. So so with the safety profile, you can do it. You encourage them. They take a lot more touches. It takes a lot more time. It's just how it is. It's a good example. When you go to the grocery store, pay attention to behaviors. Watch the S's, buy tomatoes or pick out tomatoes. The D's go there, push everybody out of the way, grab the first one and move. Watch S's, they do a lot of touches before they buy. If you're in selling, you have to know multiple touches. You just can't go in like you do with a D and say, what do you think you want to buy? They don't buy like that. Inappropriate. Now, the last introvert is a C, and we happen to be benefited here by having a very high C that will help us out a lot. How does a C know it's a C? C's have eyes that are cautious, they're very analytical, and they're quiet, but they're analyzing everything. They're like going to your banker asking for money. They don't care about your story, they want facts. So they're distrusting. They give you caution or distrust. If you're an I, you'll feel like they don't trust you. They can be judgmental because they're black and white. There's no gray. So if you think you're an I and there's love is gray and gray, there is no gray to C's. And Andrew could tell you about this. It either balances or doesn't balance. It's black or white. And they can be viewed as anal retentive. People will view them as anal, like, why are you asking me so many questions and giving me a 12-page report to fill out? What do you need to know about them? If they're your employee or their client, you got to do it right. They're right. If you're not doing it, they're right. And Cyrus just said, they're very sensitive to criticism. The S's don't like it. You'll never win an argument with a C. Cyrus, tell them why you can't win an argument with a C.
Because I'm always right.
Andrew, piggyback. Why can't you win an argument with a C?
Unmute, please.
Unmute, please.
Yeah, I think it, from a C's perspective, emotion is taken out of it. It's all based on fact and numbers and
this is data.
Yeah.
So the binary, it's black and white thinking, right or wrong. Here's why you can't win an argument with a C. They got data. When you get something wrong from a C, you probably gave poor instructions. You told him he wants 3 things, you got the 3 things. So what do you do with the C's, which may be pressing your buttons? Facts, facts, and more facts. Don't get personal. They do not like personal questions. I's are always sharing everything personally. C's do not like that.
C's are also good to get things that you might have overlooked or not have considered.
Right. They're superior at the detail and quality control. Superior. We need all these styles to have a high performance team, but that's that. So we got a couple minutes left for questions about these profiles. But what I wanted to go back to say, so the question really is what can you do about both issues? Who do you find difficult? Who finds you difficult? Is be aware of who you are and how your style impacts others, and hopefully adapt and speak to people in their language. That's why DISC and Myers-Briggs, by the way, are called the international language. It doesn't serve you to speak in your language. Any other more questions you want to ask before we go back to you?
Well, John, I find my experiences of D's and I's don't know how to say no. You referred to the S in that category.
Yeah.
But I think it's very prevalent among D's and I's.
Well, I wouldn't say D's. I wouldn't agree with you on D's, but I's. I's I have a hard time. I's tend to be people pleasers. Females more than males.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions you want to ask before we go back to you? All right, well, let's go to you. Let's start with Cyrus. Let's go your takeaways from today, Cyrus, and if you want to share any action you want to take.
Yeah, I guess my takeaway is, I think I agree. I think I used to have a lot of difficulty dealing with D's. And I think once I understand them, I don't mind it anymore. As long as they have the same sort of values and ethics as I do, I can easily these days. And it's a matter of just, getting the job done. And if we're not going to get it done, just notify them. So my takeaway from today, I I guess just take a moment to understand people, understand who they are, and communicate with them in an effective way.
Yeah, and one of the things that Cyrus just said, and Cyrus and I have been together and worked together for a while. Once you get more comfortable with the styles, that it's not as stressful anymore because it becomes familiar. Sandy, what's your takeaways from today and any comments? Can you hear me, Sandy? Okay.
Sandy put her answer in chat. My challenge with these is about who has the stage.
Who has the stage? Okay. All righty, good. Andrew, what's your takeaways from today and any action you think what action you need to take?
Yeah, I find the discussions very interesting because I find myself all over the board at times. You know, I yesterday was a perfect example. I had a client come into my office. We talked about all these different things, and then the C in me was coming in saying, "Hey, I've got things I've got to get done," but at the same time, I was perfectly happy to have that discussion with him. So I feel like, you know, I can adapt a fair amount, but to some extent, there's a comfort level where it goes back to, and I also think that, John, you're right, in situations where when I'm in the office working with clients, I'm certainly one way. When I'm at home and maybe interacting with friends, I'm very different. And I think it's really that task focused, but I think it's also recognizing those people, and there's certain, you know, a client comes in and they start talking about their personal life. Well, then I realize, hey, let's have a little bit of that discussion and interaction. But then at the same time, let's get down to the task, because, you know, the task is what's the focus. So I find myself going all over the board, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
A little bit.
Right. Good. Betty, what's your takeaways from today?
Well, I think Ray's mentioned CIDs and other things, but I really would like to learn more about it because I would like to be able to relate to all of them.
Right. Well, easy thing to do. You can call Darlene in our office. You can it takes 2 minutes of instructions, take 12, 15 minutes to take it. And it's very important. Leader to leader, it's very important to see how others see our natural leadership style. And if you've never done any work like this, sometimes it's looking in the mirror. What you see isn't what others see.
That's scary, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very good to know. It's important to know how others see you. Samantha, what's your takeaways from today?
Well, one of them is that I definitely I and D. I've learned that about myself a little bit. I was in one quadrant. I think I'm kind of maybe somewhere in the middle, as I'm sure we all are in different circumstances and such. But I learned a lot about D that I was like, oh, I am that. And I think like something I try to apply, because so much of my pre-COVID year, the year before that, was like networking and such. And I always want to speak to someone in what I call like their professional language of love, so to speak. But I wasn't using certain of these mechanisms. I was just picking up on things from them. So I think if I take a second to sort of think about what type of person they are, and then figure out, that'll give me a mechanism to figure out just how to talk to them in their professional language of love.
Right. That's very good. And in the practice, the more you practice, and how you can do this again is practice stopping and paying attention. It doesn't even look, people won't know you're paying attention. You'll know it. Dennis, what's your takeaways?
I got a couple of them. One of them is really recognizing each quadrant gets down to individualism. But in general, when you're talking about values, it can be any of these people, and you're looking for a common denominator. So you're using a common denominator, but taking advantage of understanding the behaviors of how to bring them together. The other big takeaway for myself has been trying to figure out where my behavior of being such a strong C at times comes in, and it hasn't registered on the DISC thing, but I've noticed that where I'm dealing with fire codes, that's a factual thing. There's no give on that. And I excel in those areas. And so that's just a highly adaptive portion for me. It's not my natural.
Yes. Okay, so here's an interesting, if you look at DISC profiles, you'll see C's and it'll say they're perfectionistic. And that's true on a detail, but perfectionism can be a trait that goes DIS or C, because a lot of people think I'm a high C and I'm lower than 10%. So if you have perfectionistic tendencies, you will show up as you're a C. You're not really a C. What you are is you got challenges with perfectionism, which can help you do things right, but you dot your I's and cross your T's, and it can serve you, but it also can hurt you. But it's a different thing than the DIS and C.
Okay, so that's as much as anything core values and integrity on that one then.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then the other comment is I know Betty fairly well. We've met many times together in Ray's meetings, and I would highly encourage you to take up on this offer for that free disc. You'll learn a tremendous amount about yourself as well as other people.
Yeah, it'll help you deal with Ray. If it's possible, if it's possible.
Well, it used to be.
If you
Ray
can't,
would
you
say,
get Jerry as a coach.
well, Ray would always say he's our favorite mentor and our worst tormentor. Today I can say he's my favorite tormentor.
Jerry, what's your takeaways?
I need to learn to be patient with influencers. Patience is not one of my strengths. It is compared to what I used to be, but certainly not something that I have a hard time when people won't get to the point.
Okay, and here's for all of us, by the way, this is people that presses buttons. Eyes presses buttons when they're rambling on and never get to a particular point. What you can do to all the eyes in your life is do three things. Go to them, Jerry, and say, what is it you like about my communication? And I should keep doing. What don't you like about my communication? I should stop. And what's the one thing I should start doing? Because the eyes pick up intuitively on your nonverbal cues. So do the S's, but the I's and the S's are very highly intuitive people. You're not going to put much past them. So you want to get feedback, and then you can learn their language. This is learnable. Just like if you go to Italy, Samantha, what do you say? What language do you use when you go to Italy?
Touching.
Italian.
Yeah, you speak in.
I mean, as much as I can.
Yeah, you say please and thank you in the native tongue. Why? It's called respect. It's a language they understand. So, all right, Bill, takeaways from today.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Samantha said in that for me, I had a tendency to just constantly put who I am out there, or not ever thinking about who I'm talking to and trying to adjust to what they might want to see. And I think that's, it's holding me back in a way. It's not thinking about how the other person is receiving me.
And if you go a little deeper into this, Bill, it's about learning about the nature of your DISC profile, but underneath that is the nature of your ego. And when you understand the nature of your ego, then you can understand, accept, and support it, and you can stop and bench it. But until you understand and accept it, you can't bench it.
Right.
So it requires practice. It's like brushing your teeth. It's like lifting weights. It's a practice. You practice and you'll learn the language and you can adapt. Ray, what's your takeaways?
Well, I was quite familiar with this. You gave me some new pointers, but I also think that there's a tie-in between DISC and neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes, absolutely.
And because the mirroring also is very important in the communication when you're dealing with somebody.
Yes, yeah.
So
There's a lot of science and different languages used in this, but what I would say that is done incorrectly, in my opinion, DISC is not a personality profile. DISC is a behavioral tool. It's a very good behavioral tool. And if you really want to understand yourself, you have to understand more about your culture, your values and your beliefs and your mission and your purpose. And you need to say, but it's practical. It's probably there's a handle on it. It's an easy tool to use with a handle. And it's in the early stages of 10 steps to conscious leadership, what I like to call conscious leaders. It's an early stage tool. Matt, anything else you want to say about today?
You know, what and this is on my mind because I launched a website for a new venture today. And as I'm thinking about it, this is not that it's easy, but it's easier to do one-on-one because I'm getting cues from you as to, are you a D, are you an I, are you S, are you C? And I can moderate accordingly. But as I'm kind of built this website to talk about this new venture, I'm realizing, like, you know, over here it sounds kind of D-ish, over here it kind of C, is kind of S, and I'm just thinking about how I can maybe figure out the style of my buyer in such a way that I might be able to land them in their language, you know. So now I'm kind of thinking of this a little more in terms of how do I kind of pre-plan conversations that I won't be having live.
Disc in marketing is right up that alley.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Don't write a C proposal if they're a D. They're gonna piss them off.
Yeah.
All right. As for Ray, I want to do a little commercial on Ray and Bill, and then a little something about Matt and what Matt's doing coming up, and then we'll do Q&A, and you can stay or leave. So Ray Silverstein, I make fun of him as an old goat because he's older than I am, but he's a wise old goat, and he's a marketing guru. And he's got some really interesting things he does in his pro group. So if you haven't attended a pro group, attend it. And Bill is very lovable and one of the nicest human beings you'll meet, but he's also astute in this real estate domain, and which is a real particular new area right now, what's going to happen. And so when you have that, he's also one of the top connected connectors in Chicago, and knows how to use LinkedIn and connected connections better than anybody else I know. So if you want to learn about being a connected connector or real estate, go to Bill. And Matt Elwell is humble about this, and I've worked with Matt for over 20 years. He's taught improv for Comedy Sports. He's the president of Comedy Sports. He's a very good keynote speaker. He's a great trainer. And he's going to be doing next, the 8th. What's the date you're doing? 10 Steps to Conscious Leadership.
December 8th. Yeah. And we still have some room in that session.
Yeah. So if you're interested in 10 Steps to Conscious Leadership, which starts with DISC in the early stage, reach out to Matt and sign up. I think there's a few seats left. And you'll actually get a deeper understanding of this. Betty, that might be a good one for you to connect with Matt on. So with that, I'm going to close it out and say we can stay and still chat, ask questions, network, whatever you want to do. But if you need to run to another meeting, we understand that. And I want to thank you for your participation today.
Thank you, John.
Can I get one word in?
Yeah.
On December 10th at 9:30 Central Standard Time, Bill will be giving us insight on the real estate market today, whether you're a buyer, renter, seller, if you want to renegotiate your lease. So today is a different environment, and Bill is going to be our resource at that program.
When is it again, Ray? What time?
December 10th, 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Okay. All right, great.
John, if I could also jump in, but Bill, I don't know if you want to jump in first and talk about anything.
Go right ahead.
You're good. Okay. Just to do a quick commercial. So, you know, I facilitate things like this. Tuesday, December 8th from 3 to 5 is the Conscious Leadership Group, and we can forward you information on that. We'll be sending out an email kind of connecting everybody, so feel free to reply to that. But then also what I was just talking about, I just dropped it in chat. We launched today Play Polarities. It's a one unified framework for all personal and professional development. So if you're the kind of person who goes to things like this and you really enjoy just learning more, that's a way to organize your understanding around getting better, doing better, and being better.
Matt, will you send an email connecting all of us by tomorrow?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Well, anyway, you're here. You can stay, ask questions. Anybody else have any questions? The group, just throw them out.
John, we give you a hand, we give you a thumbs up.
That's in lieu of money. Whenever Ray does that, that's in lieu of money. Dennis will tell you that. Jay, what's your, that's in lieu of money, right, Jerry?
Right. Well, here, to even give you more money here, how's that?
Oh, claps. Think clap. Now you know. Now you know how to use Zoom. Okay.
That's funny. So Samantha, how often you go to Italy?
I have only been once for a 2-week period of time during law school. I did a study abroad program there.
Really?
I did a longer study abroad, but 2 of the weeks were in Italy. And it was,
my wife and I's favorite country to visit. We adore Italy. We just the food, the culture, the people. It never gets old.
I was wondering. I was like, did you peg me as Italian? Did you know? But yeah, I love it too. I could literally eat pasta and meatballs and red sauce like every night for the rest of my life. I might not make it very long, but yeah.
No,
yeah, I always say if I only had to eat one type of food, but the food in Italy, you can't duplicate it here. The food in Italy is unbelievable.
Oh, I love it. I'm also just a huge foodie, and when it comes to food, it's like I don't discriminate. I love everything a lot. So, but yes, obviously, I love it. It's my favorite to cook too.
Yeah.
John, when you were talking about taking forever to choose a tomato, I was like, that's just good sense. You gotta I mean, come on.
Hey, Andrew, any other comments or questions?
No, I thought it was great. I think it's, I think it's good to have this kind of mindset where you're thinking about how you connect with other people, realizing the differences, because again, it's not necessarily something that I've thought about a lot in the past. And now as we start, as I start realizing, and I realize, hey, and in some cases, I feel like I do it intuitively a little bit as well, because, but having that greater awareness, I think, is a great thing, because then you realize right away, it's almost switching gears. When you're meeting with a client and you're like, okay, they are a D. All right, here's how we need to have this. When you're setting your meeting agenda or so forth, that it comes into play because you want to really sort of gear towards that person. So I think it's very helpful in that sense.
Andrew, one comment also, when you're writing communication to people, if you're writing to a D, you write one style. If you're writing to an S, you write another style. And if you're writing to a C, you write another style. So, so you have to think about what is that person, and you want to define them. Dennis, you had a thumbs up.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to comment to Betty again that what I had done was taken my profile with John, and I was so intrigued with it. We made the next step to get everybody in my office, admin staff, on it. And that's where we had the greatest value of all of us learning about each other and how to better connect with each other. And so I mentioned earlier about having a common denominator. The fact that we're different doesn't bother us. The fact that we have a common denominator of learning how to communicate is what the real value of it was. So granted, it costs more money to do the whole bunch, but John works very well with us to make that possible.
Dennis, they still talk about it at all?
Yes, we do. And that's a conscious choice to do that, because the point is, if you're not, it's kind of like that exercise or that discipline. The more you bring it consciously in terms of trying to develop it, the better you're going to be at it.
Another thing I wanted to add is that it's like, no matter what profile you are or the person that is receiving your message, whether it's written or verbal, it's worth noting, like, two beating hearts can connect no matter what on something. And it's just a matter of connecting smarter, not harder. And like, these are really good tools, because I honestly, and I feel like now I'm going to sound presumptuous saying this, but I always make this joke, like, I could connect with a brick wall, and I don't mean by walking into it. I mean, like, I can truly find something to connect with. It doesn't matter gender, age, it doesn't matter what type of, I can find something to connect with which is interesting because I'm usually like a leader talker, but to listen and connect on something, but it's getting there quicker, I think, if I utilize these tools and just, I always say like work smarter, not harder, but connect smarter, not harder.
Samantha, I really resonated with what you just said. And I just dropped into chat one of my favorite Patrick Lencioni books called Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars. And I think one of the things we can do at the organizational, at the team level, to create that kind of authenticity and that connection is to make sure there's a shared understanding of the need. Because I think at that point, if two people are like, this has to happen or it all goes to pot, they will find a way to work together. And oftentimes, so one of his great points is there are not a lot of clicks in trauma centers and in emergency rooms because the demand for shared excellence is so great. And so he talks about how do you create that culture even when you're not in that kind of environment.
Good analogy. Thank you.
This is great. I really love this, guys. You can probably tell I'm really transparent, and you can tell I'm not about to blow smoke. Like, I go to so many events, virtual and in person, pre-COVID. This is really good. Like, this is really impactful and engaging, and everybody engaged, whether it was like writing or verbally. Like I said, I'm not blowing smoke. Like, I'm pretty impressed. I like this. This was great.
We try and make these, Samantha, engage conversations rather than presentations, because most of our clients are business owners and they don't want to be talked to. They want to have a conversation. So we specifically stay away from PowerPoint presentations. So what's your business again? I'm not clear what you said. What do you do?
So I own a consulting firm, and it recently, this past year, has kind of had new verticals, but I work with firms in the financial services space. I happen to be a lawyer, so there are a couple facets of what I do in the legal realm, but also still in the financial services model. So it's everything from compliance manual policies and procedures to testing, to mock SEC exams, to getting firms registered with a certain state or the SEC or FINRA.
Who are your clients?
So private equity firms, investment advisors, hedge funds, broker dealers, money services businesses, investment banks, and then some one-off individuals in certain senses. If it's like a person that is having to deal with like an individual regulatory action with FINRA or something like that. But for the most part, it's the firms themselves.
How'd you hear about this today?
Through Bill.
Oh, Bill. Bill and you know each other. Okay. Yep. Bill comes with his family Betty doesn't know. I think Dennis knows it. We have a museum in our home. We have the only Route 66 train museum of its kind in the world. It's in my basement. And Bill comes, his kids, he can't bring up my name because kids, my home is like children's paradise. If you go to my website and under About, you can see a video. It has 90,000 views of a Route 66 train museum. And Bill comes with his kids who just adore our house because it's a fun house. It's the kids call my house the fun house. So
I love that.
It's closed now because of COVID, but anyway, but we still got it. But that's how I know Bill and I, so he comes over here with his kids a lot.
Yeah, we met because I was, like I said, pre-COVID was my first year with my firm. So I was out network. I met like 1,300 people in a 9-month time period. It was like it was a lot, but it was exciting because I learned different ways in different verticals. So now part of my business is like helping other firms instead of just the clients. Sometimes I help firms that would be on paper deemed like competitors of mine or have some overlap in services to help them bridge gaps. And it came organically. It was just like a competitor needed help and said, hey, weird ask, but do you have any bandwidth to help? And I'm like, I think differently about this. There's so many people in this professional sea. I'm happy to help someone create a new revenue stream, a new deliverable for their clients. It's no skin off my business's back.
Right.
So it's been exciting.
So Betty, any other questions or takeaways from today?
Yeah, how is it exactly I get in touch with you to see about this?
Call Darlene. Darlene. My wife is called Darlene. She's charming. One of my clients calls her the sweetest human being in the whole world. I said, you know, he told his whole company. I said, you know, I have to live with her every day. Now, when she says anything remotely not nice, I said, is that any way for the sweetest, kindest human being in the whole world to talk? But she is very, very nice. And she's humble about it, but she does this for people all over the world. Call 773-775-6636. 773-775-6636. Tell her you were at the Ray Silverstein event, and you would like to take a disk management profile. She'll give you 2-minute instructions. You take it honestly in the work setting. In other words, what's your title?
Office manager.
Okay. So you take it as the office manager, and it will be, it'll give you some insight.
Okay.
So it's
Betty,
good.
Betty, she's so nice. You have to say that Dennis from R&G says to say hi, and only because John is always on the phone, I never get to talk to Darlene. She's that nice.
Yeah, she's something. And she understands, by the way, she's American Japanese. She understands Eastern and Western language.
Okay.
She understands the unspoken of, like we were talking about some Asian, how Asians view that, Matt. Very, very, the East versus the West is a very interesting, different language. You know,
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, what words mean. So anyway, thank you for coming. And if you have other questions about it, you call me. You can call me at 773-641-9631, 773-641-9631. Be happy to answer any of your questions. Matt, I'll see you next Tuesday. And thanks again for participating.
Good to see all of you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.